Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cash Up, a weekly show where we converse with amazing folks in DFIR. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Veronica Schmitt, also known as V and Poison Pixie on Twitter. Veronica is an assistant professor at Noruf in Norway, an independent security researcher at Medtronic, and a partner at DFIR Labs. Prior to her role at DFIR Labs, she worked as a cyber forensic examiner for the Special Investigating Unit. She has over 15 years of DFIR industry experience. She has also earned an MS in Information Security from Rhodes University with a specialization in forensic analysis of malware. Veronica is a well-known speaker internationally, having spoken at the SANS DFIR Summit, DEF CON, Bizzaboo, Web Security Summit in Johannesburg, and so many more. Veronica's done groundbreaking research into Internet of Things, particularly biomedical devices or Internet of Medicine. She examines medical devices security and the potential for malicious activity. She posts about her research on her blog, veronicaschmitt.com, where you can also find episodes of her interview show, Behind the Incident. She's also an incredible artist. If you go to my Twitter homepage, the picture on the right of my banner was actually drawn by Veronica, and it's amazing. And with that, hi, V.
Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have you here.
So am I. Thanks for having me.
So, listening to that bio of everything you've done in this industry, I just want to start off by knowing, how did you get here?
Well, I find it interesting when people introduce me, because that's obviously not how I see myself. I go to work every day feeling like the 8-year-old that's playing dress up, because I enjoy my work so much. It's literally surreal to look back and think, wow, that's all the things I've done, but there's so much more that I want to do. And like I said, it's literally, I don't think I've done enough yet. I want to do more, but it's been a day of pleasure every day of my life. I haven't gone to work one single day.
I totally get it, right? Because it's play. Because you're doing things you love and you're doing things to help other people. And that's like so cool. So how did you get started and wind up on this DFIR path 15 years ago when it was really a new field?
So in South Africa, we had Jason Jordan that kind of pioneered this industry, and it was something that I never considered. At the heart, as a little girl, I wanted to become a medical technologist. I wanted to work with premature babies and the ventilators and medical equipment surrounding that.
Wow.
But unfortunately, I didn't have the finances to go study straight after school, so I joined the workforce as an administrative assistant, and always helping out with the odd IT issues and assisting the office. And it was brought under Jason's attention when I phoned him the one day abruptly after being told that that's the guy that I should speak to, that I wanted to do forensics. Not knowing what I was walking into, just knowing that it sounded much better than admin, and I love technology. His way is to root out the weeds by giving you so much reading work that you'd never get through. I kind of binge read everything in a couple of days and asked for more soon after, because it was something that I now had a mission in life, because I could make a difference in this, right? It inevitably led me back to medicine, where I am now.
Well, that's what I love, is I can see the full circle here from what you wanted to do. That's incredible.
So yeah, that's kind of, as a 19-year-old, how I stumbled into this industry. But as I said, there's no regrets from my side. I had a very good mentor in Jason, a very harsh mentor, but he made me who I am and assisted me to become the best version of myself. The cases weren't always pretty, but in the end, there was always someone's life that was changed for the better.
I mean, that's such a good point, that one of the values of what we do is that it actually has impact. Even if we don't see it, every single case we work, be it corporate, be it civil, be it law enforcement related, be it military, be it intelligence, it all has real effects in the real world. And to be able to do something that's tangible like that is incredible. Ken Pryor mentioned that it's a wonderful thing to feel that way about your job just now. And I love how you found such a mentor in Jason, who is incredible. And he's doing so much to better and introduce people to the field and working on the SANS 308 course. And Jason's great. And I love the fact that he was able to, as you mentioned, bring you to the best part of yourself. I'm actually really excited to hear you say how much reading he gave you to try to push you off, because I'm actually currently working with somebody who wants to career switch into digital forensics, and I've kind of made a syllabus, and I'm working with her on the side, kind of to learn for myself too how to maybe educate about forensics outside a traditional program. And I've been lending her books and completely lambasting her with reading. She unfortunately has some books by Brett Shavers right now, some books from Owen Casey, some books from Brian Carrier. She's got some hard reading, and I've just been lambasting her. So I'm glad that worked, because we'll see if it if it works with this individual as well.
So I always say one of the fundamental things that I use every day in forensics is reading and writing. It sounds so silly, but I mean, it is one of the things that writing a report is a skill set that I feel has developed since I wrote academically for my master's. There was a significant change, but also reading is a big thing, to read and understand and interpret. These are important skill sets, and the books you mentioned, I ironically have them. They're just packed at the moment, but reading is such an important element, and it's something I try and teach my students as well, because it's fundamentals, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic. It's things we live by.
It's funny, because I have these conversations with my kids. My 13-year-old is questioning why he's learning things now in school. And I'm like, you don't know the skills you're going to use. Like, you might think all mommy does is hack at devices and look at ones and zeros. But for every single thing I do and everything I've done in my whole career, I have to write a report, and I have to be able to gauge it to my audience. And at the beginning of what I'm doing, I always have to think about making sure my notes get me to that report. So my writing all along with my technical stuff has to be able to lead me to that. So I think it's brilliant. How does that inform how you teach your classes now that you're a professor?
I'm still finding my feet. So I tend to lean to more practical, because I'm not perfect and I want them to learn through doing. But I'm trying to balance it with theory now. So this is a very big learning curve, going from industry and having lectured somewhat to developing coursework. I have amazing people that I work with. The North University in Kristiansand, really amazing. And it's been interesting starting my career at ground level over after so many years. And I'm learning every day. I'm setting assessments. They even having me design a medical device forensics week that we just deal with all things healthcare and medical device. And that's something that no one's done before. And forever I will look back as influencing something I'm passionate about, because inevitably patients like myself could benefit from those skill sets. So it's close to my heart in the literal, know how to forensically look at things, because it's inevitable that hospitals are getting attacked and breached, and patients are suffering from that. So having these things mature is to my benefit as a patient. All of us are patients, Absolutely. So it benefits the world.
And for anyone who doesn't know, V is our first cyborg guest, self-described cyborg. And what I love is that you've taken a part of your real life and applied it to research. And you've been not only researching, but sharing and influencing with that. Can you kind of explain your journey to how you went from calling alerts to the medical field to actually getting to do research for the medical field?
So at 19, I got my first device. Short story is, again, I don't come from a wealthy family. Our insurance didn't cover this because my dad just had a knee replacement. So it's expensive getting 2 leads and a dual chamber ICD. It's not inexpensive. Wow. So the medical company that I'm working for now, ironically, whose device I have in my body, donated that first device to my cardiologist, who then pro bono put it in me with 2 weeks left to live.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah, so it changed, medical devices changed my life fundamentally in such a big way because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have 2 girls. I wouldn't have a master's. So I wanted to know how it works.
And you wouldn't be influencing all of the people who you're sharing and influencing and saving, be from your medical research and the stuff you do in forensics. Like, there are so many lives that have been affected aside from just yours and your immediate family. And you should take pride and recognize that as well.
You are very kind. Thanks, Jess. I just do it because I want others to know these things are important, because we need one device to be hacked in such a way for tens of years for patients not to trust their device. And I've been through the not trusting your device, which I can tell you is the worst possible feeling when the thing that is supposed to keep you going just isn't functioning as it should. That probably leads to another story where November, December, I was resuscitated more than once due to my heart stopping because of, as you put it, a faulty wire. So wires are very important to sense what is happening in the heart. And I went to my cardiologist and I said, listen, this device is not working. And I got told it's a vitamin D. You know, maybe it's in your head, maybe it's psychological. But forensics saved my life because I went on a mission to pull the data that I had, which was my iWatch health kit. And I did data analytics to prove that 79% of the time my heart rate is below 49, which is very dangerous.
Wow, that's very low.
I did data correlation to show to him that this device is picking up discrepancies where it would be 49, 48, 47, and never be brought the pacer is supposed to be doing. So due to that, I had to bring my cardiologist proof that no longer the device was working because it was testing correct, because it was the leads that were faulty. But more so than that, the new cardiologist that resuscitated me noticed that the device that I had was not the right device when they swapped over to the second one.
Oh my gosh.
Now, things are bad. But if it was to happen to any other patient,
nobody else would have had the information to get it changed. They would have told them it was psychological. This is so scary and so brave of you. Kevin Pagano just mentioned that this is an incredible story. Bravo. Thank you for giving back to the community, because you are literally, the work you're saving, not only did you save your own life, which I truly believe you did by using forensics, but you're saving the life of others. And this goes by, forensics is more than just saving companies on their worst day. Forensics is more than just stopping child predators. Forensics is finding the truth in data that's saving lives in the biomedical field. And I don't think people are thinking or talking about this. So thank you for the research you've done. Thank you for being ethical in your research and examining things on yourself, which not everybody has access to even do this research, and for taking your brains and talents and making it something so worthy. Elon mentions, wow, that's amazing. And I've got to tell you, you know, people missed our conversation obviously before the show, and we were talking about troubleshooting wires on aircraft jets and how that's similar to the body. And, you know, it's about taking skills that you have and applying them in different ways and thinking of where they go. You've done some incredible talks at DEF CON. I've listened to several of them, some of them post and some of them during, and you've spoken a lot about vulnerabilities in these medical devices. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your thoughts in terms of these things actually being attached to the internet. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? What's the vulnerability? I'd love to just hear your thoughts overall on that.
Well, I kind of joke at it and say that when I got my new device, I did the risk assessment, right? Because I know that the telemetry that it uses has got vulnerabilities in. But I can tell you, going from having no quality of life to being the bouncing troublemaker that I am now again, Right. I mean, 6 weeks after heart surgery with new leads and, new device, I was running around with Sarah Edwards and Jason Jordan at Bletchley Park, which I wouldn't have done otherwise, right? So I had to make the
Absolutely.
decision. These devices are not built with security in mind, right?
No.
We are working on that. They're also not built with forensics in mind. If you look at logging and monitoring, it's traditionally from a developer's perspective.
Absolutely. And we try to manipulate it to use it the way we need it.
Exactly. So I kind of grew tired of always doing DFIR work. It's like, oh shoot, I wish I had that. I wish I had that. So I decided, well, if I don't have it, I'm going to influence how it's built. So
Bravo.
I'm going to build what I need for future breaches because inevitably it's going to happen. So if that means working with developers and manufacturers to change and shift our mindset, I call it forensic development. So taking a developer and how they look at logs, but placing forensics in mind. Can we find context? Can we correlate data? There's some exciting things I can't talk about that I'm doing for Medtronic under NDA, but I'm excited for when I can. It will change what we are doing because companies are now saying, we can be breached. Devices are vulnerable. We have Ripple 20, which is a high impacting thing. And the way that you identify Ripple 20 is through network forensics. It's examining IP packets and network packets.
Yes, absolutely.
The way that we look at medical devices is much like memory forensics, right? Some of them don't even have a file system. What I'm trying to do is saying these aren't foreign devices. They look different, they act different, but they have communication protocols that forensic people are familiar with.
Absolutely.
They have FAT16 or XFAT or, what we are familiar with. I mean, majority of the systems I've looked at was FAT16, which is something we know how to interpret the data with a hex editor. We know how to, rechain FAT links. Those are information we have, but for some reason people think it's foreign. When it becomes implantable, it gets complex because now we have a patient that has a device within them.
Right. It's very hard to do a chip off on a device inside a person.
I'm going to kind of punch you if you try and do that.
Right.
And I'm telling you, you can't put me in a Faraday cage. We've considered that running through the IR processes. I don't think most patients will like that. But these devices use wireless, low energy Bluetooth,
Very much like all other IoT devices. I've done a lot of research in IoT devices. And to be honest, these are IoT devices, but they're IoT devices that are in a container, a human being that we can't touch. And, I love this concept that you mentioned, which, you're extrapolating from your own experience and you're saying we all, and I think we have to, like we as humans, we as people, we have these in our bodies. And I think we have to recognize that such a large percentage of humans today have anything from insulin pumps to pacemakers, and a variety of different medical implants and monitors, and that this is going to continue. This is going to become more of us are going to have implants inside of us. And we have to think about the vulnerabilities, but also what we can learn from the data. And there are so many different implications to the analysis of this data. Everything from insurance claims of did somebody's condition worsen or change because of a manufacturer malfunction of a device, to being able to look at results of real crimes, because biomedical stuff can tell us things about a person's state at the time. When did they actually die? Were they active at the time? Were they sleeping? Were they panicky, etc.? When we combine that information with medical professionals, I just think it is brilliant that not only are you bringing up how we use this in forensic analysis, but you're saying how can we influence and store more data to make that analysis better? And how can I change things by looking at the company? I applaud your efforts. I applaud the fact that you spent years screaming about this until you developed a relationship with the manufacturers. And she wasn't screaming. I'm going to be clear. V is actually kind of not a screamer. She spoke well and eloquently and gave really good facts about the research she did ethically at DEF CON. Check out those presentations. The links have been dropped. And I can't say how much I applaud you for bringing that back to other people who have no idea the influence of the work you're doing on their bodies. So thank you so much for bringing that.
I appreciate that. And I think it's a difficult conversation, Jess, if we think about it. No one wants to talk about humans getting hurt or devices being compromised but unfortunately we have to talk about it because the inevitability is people will kill each other and shoot each other and it becomes easier. But again, we need to consider that the clinical outweighs the security because no one wants to hear this, but security is not a functional requirement on medical devices.
It's not a functional requirement in development. Let's be 100% honest. Most programs, if you speak to most developers, that is not a fundamental requirement that they're necessarily at all institutions. There are exceptions taught, and it's ingrained as part of the process. And it's not just biomedical devices. It's everything that we look at. There are companies that are changing that, and it's definitely brought across IoT. I mean, their security in IoT is weak, and it's just not, it's more important for them to get out devices quickly. And it's all about risk, right? We do risk assessments for our customers, and that's what this is. Everything in the world is vulnerable. We know that as cybersecurity professionals. It's a matter of risk. You don't have the choice to not have this device.
Definitely, I don't, because if my choice with that is I have heart failure, and I'm not shy talking about my medical condition because it's kind of been out there. Someone once said to me, you can't change the world or have a mission if you don't share why it's important. And why it's important is there's people like me that are dependent on these devices, needing quality of life. I mean, there's nothing worse than being so tired that you don't even want to breathe. That is a literal thing. It's a feeling I've experienced. But what I've realized is medical devices, as they stand at the moment, yes, there's evidence, but there's not mature evidence. So I am spending significant time the last 9 months working with developers, not security, because let's face it, with all due respect, if we want to stop the legacy problem, we need to develop
at the beginning.
Exactly. We need to, push and influence that level. We need to have forensic mindsets for, with developers saying, okay, you're producing logs. What do the logs tell us? Or, detecting these artifacts. And some medical devices run on Android systems, right? There's lots. You get VxWorks, which is basic Linux. It's bringing the concepts home to understand that these devices are actually a mini computer. We have a patient monitor that's a Power PC. Right, the tech is getting better. But just to give you an idea about the legacy problem that medical faces is, in the US alone, 600,000 new medical devices are produced. These last between 10 and 12 years each, right, in circulation.
Right, and then you have to have surgery to have a replacement piece placed in.
Yeah, so people don't realize that if you have a battery change for an ICD, the whole device gets explanted. It is surgery. It sucks. It gets worse because the human body is a bit vindictive when it's cut open and creates scar tissue.
Absolutely.
But you know what? I've seen how these devices work. I sat with the the developer of the firmware, because he worked on my device that I have now.
Wow.
We worked together. It's very surreal, and he walked me through the code, and he walked me through this, and I'm like, hey, I know what that is, I felt that work, and he would say, okay, so how long did it take to fix, your heartbeat? And it's a very fortunate place that I'm in, that I get to work with these guys that thought up the stuff that's keeping me going. So if you guys want to,
amazing.
If anyone ever wants to blame anyone for all the trouble I cause on DEF CON, refer back to Medtronic. I mean, they're the reason that I am an Energizer buddy. But I love this stuff. Medical is innovative. Now in COVID, if we didn't have home monitoring, doctors would struggle to see their patients. We'd have patients that have to go to hospitals, get infected. It has its place.
And this is exactly why it needs to be connected to the internet, because there are people who say that we just shouldn't have these devices online. But as you pointed out, home monitoring, especially in a time of COVID, has become so critical. So we have to look at security. I watched one of your presentations where you brought up, hey, these devices are capable of AES encryption. However, that affects the battery life. And if we reduce the battery life, literally we expose people to surgeries at a higher rate and more frequently to have their devices replaced. And so this is why it's so interesting from a technology perspective, because I go, oh, well, you want to make sure you're using a low energy communication intentionally to reduce the drain on battery. And there are different things that you need to do, but one of those things is that actual use of encryption for that data at rest and in transit is going to decrease the battery life. And so there's so many assessments when we're dealing with humans that have to be done that aren't done with other technology.
I find it so funny how people get upset about medical devices, but yet their whole lives are on social media and they give their data to Facebook. I mean, yeah, I'm connected to the internet and I'm perfectly aware that that's the case. But I also understand that I'm a hard target to hack. It's not as easy as the movies or Hollywood makes it seem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But it is an amazing, it's amazing for a person to see the effect physically. I have photos which I'm presenting actually at 7:30 tonight at the Israeli Cyber Week. How forensics saved my life. I show the correlation between the app where we managed to capture the ICD firing and the heart rate returning to normal. I mean, that was like indicative saying, hey, my technology is working. But on my blog, I show very raw how I felt when I woke up, because A, it's a very dangerous surgery removing leads. B, my hands and my feet were warm, something that they aren't if my blood pressure is not managed. And my blood pressure was normal.
Right.
That is something that is I'm not used to. But I mean, forensics taught me that trust your gut. The data never lies.
Truth in data. Truth in data.
So Jason taught me a saying which is now tattooed on my back in binary: truth through science. And this is what I did. I'm doing research on something that there's no books written on. I have forensic engineering documents and design documents, but no one's really looked at it from a forensic perspective. And it's challenging and scary and amazing. I love it. I mean, bits and bytes are what I eat for breakfast. As I say, logs are something that makes me happy. One of the things that developers laugh at, I always say to them, be kind to your future forensicators, meaning if you write your logs, make it readable and contextual. And I want to see more people doing it because it's crossing barriers. Medical devices aren't just something foreign. I mean, your iWatch is constituted under FDA as a medical device.
Absolutely. And this is key, is that you are ensuring that the data is there. And, this doesn't just apply to medical devices. When we do forensics in other areas and we go, oh, I wish that data was there. Why aren't we reaching out to these organizations and saying, hey, it would be really helpful if you annotated if this was synced data or native data? Maybe this is things that organizations would be willing to do to help law enforcement, intelligence, civil cases, etc. But it's just things they haven't thought of when they've created their logs. I don't know what the possibility is there, but we shouldn't shun it, because obviously, I mean, forensics saved your life, and you've probably saved the lives of others. And the fact that that data was available, again, another argument for the data being available, is if that data wasn't available, you would not have been able to watch, sync it to your Apple device, and go ahead and exploit the health kit to recover that data and determine that you had a faulty ICD lead. Like that, you've combined troubleshooting and digital forensics together in a brilliant way, and it saved your life and others. There's no else about it. So, as an instructor, changing topics slightly, and someone who's been in this field as a leader in this field for so long, something I like to ask people is what resources they use. What are your go-to resources, V?
I kind of, for the work that I'm doing now as academic journals, I kind of am a big nerd in that regard. I like to see what research is out there, and I like to poke at holes. So if I don't find something, I'm going to go find why there's no academic papers. But reading, I mean, anything. I do Google alerts for anything that's interesting, and then I can go through a rabbit hole and read. But watching YouTube talks, Twitter is a big resource where I find a lot of things happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does have a dumpster fire sometimes, which you have to navigate, but there's some, gems on there. I also have blogs that I follow religiously. But yeah, the main resource, if I'm doing research is academic papers. I kind of like to have a foundational understanding of what work has been done to identify what more work I need to do. But books, I'm also a books person. I probably have too many books.
There's no such thing. No such thing.
There is such thing when you're moving and you have to decide whether you're going to take it or buy new ones. Just for the record, I'm taking all my books and leaving some other things behind because they're that important.
So,
but but I think reading is kind of a lost skill sometimes because we're so busy. We want everything in a nutshell, but we don't learn to read extensively.
You are bringing up a good point because I think there are a lot of people who read blogs and Twitters, but don't go into the deeper level of looking on Google Scholar, looking at Digital Investigations Journal, looking at what's coming out in the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, looking at what's coming out in the peer-reviewed journal World in Digital Forensics. It is incredible work, brilliant papers, and I encourage people, you will start to know the authors, what's coming out from DFRWS, Digital Forensics Research Workshop. I strongly encourage people who are maybe just used to blogs and presentations to jump into Google Scholar on a topic and go start reading these journals as they come out. Now, yes, journals tend to be for profit, not all are. And I will tell you that a little secret that I don't know if I should be sharing publicly, but if you look on Google Scholar and you see an article from an author, depending on that author's agreement with the publication, they may have the ability to freely distribute. So I highly recommend going on Google Scholar, contacting the author, and asking the author if they have those rights. They may or may not, but if they do have those rights, they will share the PDF version often of that single article with you. So that is, if you work for an academic institution, typically you do have access to those journals for free. But I do highly recommend reaching out, and the author will validate if they can or cannot share, and if they can share, they typically will.
No, definitely, I agree with you. I didn't know that little author trick, so which is one that I'm going to be trying on some of the tools I don't have access to.
Yeah, 100%
from Jessica.
And I will tell you, like, if you reach out to me and ask me, hey, Jessica, that standardization of recovery paper you did for DJI, can I get access to that? I will tell you where it is posted on NIST, as opposed to where it is in the journal, because there are sometimes cross postings by either the university. So sometimes the university where the students are or professors who wrote the paper are employed have the right to publish, and certain government agencies. So you can look at the co-authors and look at their institutions and see if the paper is also publicly available for free that way.
Yeah, so, no, that's some good advice that I'll be sharing with my students tomorrow.
Well, your students should hopefully have access through your university. I hope that your university is providing journal access, but I don't know.
They are, but we don't have access to IEEE, which is kind of a standard thing. And especially for me with medical device stuff, I have to look at engineering papers because if you go 100. Search medical device forensics, there are a couple. Not to the detail that I would like to see. So my aim is to inspire as much academic literature in this, because what's the one thing that physicians do, that medical personnel do? They read research that is peer-reviewed. Yeah. My blog's not going to pull attention. Me jumping up and down is not going to pull attention. But having a scientific journal, when I put that down in a meeting, they will take note. It is just, it's unfortunate that is how medicine works.
No, it is. It is. And a peer-reviewed journal is definitely of value, specifically where you're talking about. And, you know, there are places for blogs, and especially for immediate research. And you can get blogs peer-reviewed, DFIR review, but that is very different than what you can present in different environments. And in a medical environment, it does need to be a peer-reviewed journal. And I will tell you, if you haven't dug down the Google Scholar rabbit hole for forensics, there's a lot there. So it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it, 100%. So, what makes you tick outside of forensics? We've talked a lot about forensics, but you are so fun. I've had the pleasure of spending time with you, and I've had a blast every time I'm with you. What does Veronica do? What does V do outside of forensics?
I'm pretty boring. So I like to draw and I like to write, but more than that, I love to read. So I can disappear into a world of literature, and all my assessments have got this like twist on literature that I want the students to figure out. But I kind of like sewing, so I do maternity
Oh,
dresses for photographers because when I was pregnant, I realized, hey, there's nothing pretty to wear. And
huh.
then I realized that all the dresses that I started making had a mathematical rhythm to them. So I'd know that for a full skirt, I'd need 12 by 1.5 to do a circle skirt. And I started figuring out these equations, and it became super fun. And except for that, when a mom says, oh, I feel like a princess, and she's 9 months pregnant, which is the time where you feel swollen and ugly, and it just makes my heart warm. So I kind of like to sew and create. I'm one of those weird individuals. When they tested me at school, I'm 49% left brain and 51% right brain. So I love both these things almost equally. So I'll always try and be a little bit creative with everything. Um, I just
I
like
love
being
that.
I like being geeky and nerdy, and I'm a big horror fan, even though I'm petrified of clowns. Um, Look, I have a unreal fear of clowns, to the point that Jason once, we were traveling for work, says, hey, look there, and behind me is a big stand of, like one of these posters, cutouts with it. I mean, I smacked Jason so hard. I
Oh,
mean, he's like, what's that for? I like, I'm afraid of clowns. If I see a clown, I run. So, but I'm a
wow.
horror freak. I like watching suspense, and I like to try and solve it, but just not forensic things where digital forensics is involved. CSI
No,
Cyber
so it makes you
made me want
angry,
to
right?
cry. Yeah, it's terrible
Yeah,
because
want to cry. Sorry. Naming, you're accidentally saying that word names, but no. I You're 100% right. I can't stand a lot of content out there that's fiction that involves forensics because it, like, my mother watches NCIS, and back when I was able to visit my mother, I would want to like throw things at the TV if she was watching it because it just makes me angry because it's wrong and yeah, and not scientific and not at all legitimate or matching the real world. So I totally understand that. But I love how when you're outside of what you're doing with forensics, you are on the complete outside of science. You're completely in the arts and you are drawing. You are using your imagination with the things you read because it sounds like you're reading things outside of technical books. You are sewing and tying mathematical patterns to your work there where you're making people feel beautiful. I am completely enamored by the fact that you have this artistic ability and that you utilize that in your other time. Just incredible.
I love doing it because it brings me such joy. I can't choose between the two because I feel they're so much part of me. And I think the world can always use some laughter. I also, in my spare time, do terrible jokes, which, I've been told to never ever tell online, but that's kind of my quirk. I mean, I do dad jokes to the extreme. I mean,
All right, we need to hear a dad joke.
so
There's
I
too
mean,
much work now.
why did the orange stop rolling down the hill?
Why?
Because it ran out of juice.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And you're doing the and so I mean basically if I were to describe V, what does V do? I mean, I know you describe yourself as a hacker, a forensicator, a mom. Like I've seen your whole it's right at the top of your blog. If I were to describe V, I'm like she saves lives and brings joy to lives.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna coin that one. Look,
Because
I have an implant that doesn't keep me alive, and I know people are gonna think, oh my goodness, she's weird. I have a RFID chip in my hand just because it was Vegas and just because it felt right. And I was like,
Biohacking
one
Village.
more. I mean, but it is encoded with base 64 and it says beautifully broken and wonderfully flawed, because that's kind of how I look at my medical device, my heart. So the relationship between the two. But I always want to say to forensics people, we need to find joy in the world because we deal with the ugly and the dark, and you need to always focus on the joy and the happiness and just decompressing, because I've seen so many people burn out. And the COVID burn at the moment is real. We are working 16 to 20 hours a day. I feel that now that we work remotely, we don't switch off.
Yep, 100%. And I'll tell you, as somebody who worked remotely before, the rest of the world switched off, which helped. But now the rest of the world doesn't switch off. So even if you were a remote employee before, you'll see a change in that because other people aren't turning off. So I 100% think that work culture has changed. In some ways better, because sometimes there's more acceptance of daytime interruptions, especially for those of us who have children who are now home with these changes, etc. And there's more of an acceptance of those types of interruptions during this time and age. But and I've seen that. My children are older. I don't have that problem, but especially with little ones. And I think that's a positive thing. But you're right. The clock doesn't seem to turn off. There's no concept of 9 to 5 or whatever that once was. There's also no out of offices, right? Like when you travel, if I went to a conference before, I'd have an out of office. There's no concept of out of office anymore. So that's
man,
thing.
I miss conferences. I mean, February has kind of been the thing where I see Sarah for her birthday, Sarah Edwards in London.
Absolutely.
I mean, Vegas would be DEF CON time where I get to see you, or DFIR Prague. This year I was going to go to the summit, the main summit, because I really wanted to go. And just everything got to a standstill. And I'm missing the hugs and the laughter and the friendships. And, if you have the chance to go to any of these conferences, it's amazing when you find your DFIR family.
Yes. I love my DFIR family. Like you're part of my DFIR family, but
So
like
are you?
and when we see each other in Prague or when we see each other in Vegas, it's like no time has passed because we're also continuing our relationships on Twitter, and we're continuing that connectivity. And then when we see each other, it's just fantastic, right? And everyone, I want to be really, really clear. Everyone, if you are here, you are part of this community. You are part of that family. We are the most inclusive group of people in the community, and we welcome you with open arms. You are part of us. I want to share some comments that people have written as you were talking about your story, just because they're so amazing. Elon Wright says, wow, that's amazing. Ken Pryor says, that's just so cool. Thank you so much for all you've done and you're doing. Mike Williamson says he's never seen anyone tie their career back to their own beliefs and causes so masterfully. And, and also Elon says exactly, there's no such thing in reference to there being too many books. So I just wanted to share how much people love and appreciate you and the things you're doing and are just wowed by the work you're doing. So you've talked a lot about the work you've done, your forensics, your work as a professor, all of the things you're doing in terms of medical devices and research and sharing that back with your work at Medtronic. You do so much, your art, etc. But when people are beginning, and you have a lot of students who are beginning their journey, I'd really like to know what your advice is to someone who's looking to get started in digital forensics.
I always say digital forensics has a high turnaround with people because it's a hard career, right? But if you're persistent and if you want it bad enough and you keep banging at that door and breaking down those barriers, it is also the most inclusive one. But it's also ever developing. Just when you get comfortable doing an Apple device, some developer has a good time to launch a new iOS version and everything goes out the door. So if you like high intensity, high impact, times where you go, oh, I can't believe I've done that, and you can learn from your mistakes, this is the area for you. I always
Yes.
tell students mistakes are okay. I've imaged my own machine instead of a suspect machine, right? Only realized back at the lab. It happens, but if you are ever evolving and you like finding the truth, like solving the puzzle of, hey, I want to know what happened, it is the most fun. You get to do intelligence and profiling on a computer or a device that tells you exactly what kind of person uses that device. It's kind of awesome because I don't find it time, there's no other career that kind of fits for me. I mean,
Absolutely.
you have the breakers, the builders, the defenders, and then you have us that kind of puts all of that together. And that's why I kind of love it, because it follows a scientific process to find evidence, to find data, to find answers. And the puzzle aspects for me. So I always say, just be persistent. You're going to have bad times, you're going to have crap times, but you're going to have that first case you solve that's going to go, oh, that's so cool, or your breach that you work on. I find working breaches a lot of soft skill. And here's why.
Yeah.
A breach for an organization affects people that work on those systems, that build those systems, and finding the answer to say this is what you need to fix and supplying them with the solution is rewarding because you've changed the way they look at stuff.
Absolutely.
And you're starting out. You need to read, you need to learn, and never stop. That's the one thing in forensics. You can never stop and say, I know it all.
And that's one of the most exciting things to me as a forensicator is the fact that I'm always learning. It's always changing. I'm always learning from other people. It's a skill you can never master. And I just love that. There's you talked a little bit about mistakes, and I actually put this quote on Twitter last week, and I was having this conversation with Alexis, and actually it has to do with it's part of one of my lectures with my students early on, and that's the Niels Bohr quote, which is, an expert is a man, we'll change it to you, man, who has made all of the mistakes in a narrow field. And that is just so key, that mistakes are how you learn. And, I was having this thing with my students where they were imaging their own devices, and they were remote. I wasn't there because I used to do this lab hand-on where I brought the devices. So I was troubleshooting what they were doing, and I was assuming and very politely telling them what I thought the mistakes were. And they're like, how do you know that's what I did? And I'm like, oh, because I've made that mistake before. I have made all of the mistakes you guys are going to make right now. And that's the only reason. And doing those mistakes is how you learn. You remember when you make a mistake.
Exactly. Oh, I can tell you all the mistakes I've made. I still make them every day. Sometimes I do some stupid things because I'm not reading properly, or I don't know, my brain decided to have a 404 error all of a sudden and just not work anymore, which happens. But I mean...
Oh, yeah, we totally have 404s.
Like, if you make a mistake, biggest advice as a newbie, own up to it. Say, hey...
Document it.
Exactly. I made the mistake. There was a story that someone told me. Now, don't go quoting me and saying how accurate it was, but it's kind of a story that went with me for a long time. Microsoft had an instance where one of their OS versions were leaked by a developer accidentally. And they were asked why they didn't fire the developer. And the answer from business was, well, we already paid this much money towards teaching him not to make that mistake again. If we get someone new, likely they will make this mistake again.
Really interesting. I love that.
So that's kind of where it's always come from. I would rather tell you that I screwed up and tell you how I intend to mitigate against it happening again. Because I'm human. As much as I would love to believe that I'm a full android, I still make mistakes.
Cyborg's the part you've been.
But I mean, my brain's still fairly human, so I do make mistakes, but I also see the humor in myself. Learn to laugh at yourself, because goodness, you're going to talk to yourself, you're going to do things, you're going to interpret data, and you're going to go, huh, that doesn't seem right. And then you realize, OMG, that's my own machine. And it literally was the thought process of, hey, this person has the same interests as me, music as me, and I'm like, wait, no, that's my machine. And I was like, oh, I thought Jason was going to fire me, to be honest. I mean, I was 3 months on the job. He was at university, and I had to pick up the phone and say, so you know that image, the machine that we wanted to image? Well, I kind of did my own machine and just had to go up, re-image it, document it well, and not do it again.
And I'm really glad that you're bringing this up while we're talking about advice for new people, because there are people who are listening out there, and for them to hear that you and I, who've been doing this for a while, make mistakes, that really, I think, resonates with them and makes it okay. But own it and document it. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying document it. Document it so that when you see the same thing again, you remember what not to do. I mean, also document it because it should be part of your notes for your case that you're working. But if it's in research and it's not, still document it. Everything needs to be searchable so that you can learn from it and reference it again. Especially, like, let's say it's something very, very particular, like on a specific device that you need to do a specific thing, or something doesn't work on a specific device and we'll brick it. I have bricked phones. And you can ask any of us who have done this a long time, especially in mobile forensics, I have bricked phones. You need to 100% write down those things so that you don't do it again. Because the first thing I do when I see a device I don't recall is I look to see if I've seen it before, because I may have, right? And I probably have notes on it. So I love that. Delta Echo 8426JS, who I don't know who that is in IRL, says, I've never resonated more with what's being said. You can never stop. Love the pace, learning, and community that cares about learning just even 1% more each case. And that's exactly it, right? Like, we learn a little bit more with every single case research we do. And I would say on top of that, since we're all learning different things at the same time, please share your learnings. Yes, share.
So we should be like organized criminals. We should be, organized forensic investigators that share information, because, I mean, I've had instances where I'm sitting, I'm like, I really don't know what I'm looking at, and it's an Apple device, and I can ping Sarah and say, hey, have you seen this? And she's like, yeah, that's old news, this is what it is, and this is what it means. Or if I have an issue with Magnet, for example, which is something we use, I can reach out to you guys. It's the community is what makes DFIR for me. We have such pivotal information coming out at summits and conferences, and I can tell you, buy someone a beer at a conference and have a conversation. They don't buy.
Absolutely.
Well, that's my
the most valuable time you have. I actually got to say that's what's missing right now. It's hurtful. It's missing. I'm glad that I get to do this weekly and have a conversation with somebody who I miss, who I haven't seen in a while, and get to chat and talk about things. And it makes me so happy to get this time with you right now, V. But so many people don't get that opportunity right now. And I would say, reach out to us. We're all here. Share, ask. Don't be afraid, or reach out to us on Twitter. If you have a question about biomedical or anything in forensics, really, I know V will be there to help, and I'm there to help, and we all are. I don't think we've had a guest in 20 episodes who said, you know what, I really prefer it if people don't contact me. Like, we are such a welcoming community.
I prefer not have people just storm and want to hug me.
Absolutely. That's different. No, contact online. I mean, like, I will say that is something, that has been good about COVID, is there's a little more respect for personal space. That can sometimes be awkward at events, but I would say that one of the beautiful things is being able to connect with people in the community. And I'd say we're all still here, even if we're not at a physical conference.
Do you know I always think that we all have constraints, right? Life is filled with constraints, but it's what you make of it, right? You can either let a situation dictate your response, or you take the control and you decide how you respond.
Right?
That's my theory on it. And if you want to ping me and ask me questions about these kind of things or anything, my door's open. Well, my Twitter door's open. My email's there. My LinkedIn's there. I want to speak to other people, because this is not something I can do alone. I'm one person.
Can't do it in a vacuum. There's
exactly.
And I mean,
people.
this is a good call out to anybody who does have biomedical implants in them, because ethically you can only hack your own self. So if you do have devices, well, with permission, whatever, but with if you do have an implant and you're a forensicator and you can share and look at that data, that would be amazing for you to do that for the community, because there is a lack of information here.
Yeah, so what I would say, and this is my public service announcement, please don't hack your own heart. The devices
Oh,
that
no. Like, I mean, looking at your data. Look at your data.
Yeah, you can have my data, but yeah.
No, looking at your own data, I mean.
Yeah, so everyone frowns about my talk. My talk was based on an explanted device. So a device no longer connected to my body.
Correct. And you can look at those too. You can look at devices that you've had previously.
I mean, we're doing a medical device course now where we started the conversation with a post-mortem autopsy. We kind of, the unfortunate death of Dorian Gray. Now, obviously, I can't say too much because my students might see it and I don't want to give it away, but they have to solve an unfortunate death. And it's taking it from a different perspective to hope that they instill in research and go find the vulnerabilities. Because once we look at what the vulnerability is, I promise you there are forensicators out there that can anticipate what the data would look like. So therefore, we get to identify weak devices in the field using forensics.
I love it.
It's a skill set that can be applied in many ways and forms. It's not just for investigative purposes, right?
No. And I think that's important, our skills, and something that you've really displayed that's really important today. And maybe, like, really in closing, the most important thing, which is your forensic skills have value outside of the examination.
Exactly. I mean, I love forensics. I think it's probably, some people hate the fact that I have it because I catch my students out when metadata isn't correct. I've caught out a few, not at NORIF, but at previous things. So it counts against them in some instances, but you know what? What I love about hackers, and I'm going to say this, and people are going to hate me, hackers aren't all criminals, right? There's cyber criminals and there's hackers. Hackers have this unique way of looking at a problem and saying, okay, so you say that's how it's supposed to work. I don't agree with it. I'm going to find an additional way to do it.
All that a hacker means is someone who finds an alternative use case for any tool or technique. So if you're doing things outside of the way something was designed, you are hacking it. And that is a serious act or statement. That's a way that a mind works. That's a way that a person utilizes and looks at things that they see. And people with that mentality you don't have to have that mentality to be good at digital forensics, but having that mentality can help you excel. And the term has, and it shouldn't, because hackers are going to bring us the next level of innovation and are going to bring society to the next step. The people who are working on the COVID virus vaccine, they're hackers, if they admit it or not. It's hackers that bring societies forward. So yeah, I love it.
I want to do a shout out. Dual Core got married, I saw, so congrats.
Did they get married? Mazel tov! Oh my god!
So yeah, I thought I'd do a shout out and say congrats. Was on my Twitter feed earlier.
To David, Dual Core. Oh my gosh, that is so fantastic! Yay and 80. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, I totally need to go send him a message right after this. V, thank you so much for being our guest today. You are incredible. Thank you for all you give to the community. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and you're pretty damn cool. I mean, making planes jump up and down. I don't think people know just how cool you are. Ask Jess about making planes jump, and she'll tell you all about it. And thank you so much for having me. I absolutely adore the community, and shout out to all my friends. New ones, old ones, and future ones. I look forward to talking to you guys again.
Thanks, V. Please make sure you check out next week. We'll have Shanna Daly on, extreme, amazing cyber forensicator out of Australia. And if you want to see our full schedule, it's posted for the rest of 2020. Go to magnetforensics.com/cash-up. And plus, there's links there to the RSS feed and playlist to see previous episodes. And we have got a great lineup past Shanna. We've got Ryan Benson, Rob Duhart, Geraldine Blay, Brian Moran, Lenita Hinch, and so on and so forth. So we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.